Hey everybody, this is Joe. Good day. Hey, one of the projects that I started working on about 3 years ago was an Afghan box camera project. These are an integrated large format camera and portable darkroom, and they've typically been used in like second and third world countries for taking, for instance, document portraits on the street. They're also used typically these days more for tourist type of photos in many Latin American countries and in South Asia. And I was interested a few years ago in getting one of these built, and I have a couple older videos about this, but this project has been sort of languishing for some time now, and I wanted to get back and start working with it again. I recently cleaned up my garage. It's hard to tell, I know, but I actually did that recently, and now I have a little more room on my workbench, and my Afghan box camera is more accessible. So I broke it out today, and I'm kind of playing with it and seeing what the status of it is right now and what I can make it into in terms of a better tool for this purpose. Okay, so here is an example. Here's a negative I did on the Afghan box camera project a few years ago with my friend Hunter. This was a 1/4 second exposure at f8 onto, this was actually glossy grade 2 Arista. And then the print I made onto Ilford multi-grade matte finish paper at grade 3.5 filter. This was f11 at 6 seconds, and I have a series of cutouts, oval cutouts that I can put onto the printing frame that gives me the ability to kind of mask it off like this. But it's a pretty nice little picture. What's interesting about these cameras is there is no one standard design. And I've seen different designs in different parts of the world. Maybe there are regional kind of designs. A lot of the Afghan box cameras I've seen are more squarish or boxy looking. Mine is a little more long and skinny, and it takes a 4x5 film format. I have a holder up here for a SpeedGraphic type of lens board, and I'm using my old SpeedGraphic Kodak Ektar lens with it. It currently is not mounted, but it would be otherwise. I have a dark cloth arm sleeve. This sleeve was made for me by a friend of mine who has a sewing machine and knows how to sew, and I had purchased some dark cloth fabric, and he did a really good job of putting an elastic band on the cuff, and then this flange around here is a round sewing hoop that he fitted it so that I have a groove cut in to this rear piece, and that sewing hoop just fits right in there, and then this top flange fits over it to seal it up tight. And on the back of the camera is the door for viewing the view screen when you're focusing, and that door opens up like that, and you can look in there and focus on the front view screen. And then this is the focusing rod that you pull back to adjust the focus on the ground glass. And I'll show you here from the other side. Now, many of the Afghan box cameras are more wide, more squarish, and they often have a lid that opens up on top. This is my own unique design, and as I said earlier, there's no one design for these, and there's really few blueprints available online that I've seen. But my system has a side opening lid, and the lid has a flange, a light trap around it that fits into this sealing surface here. The current design of this camera is I'm using a developer and fixer. I used to have a stop bath tray in the middle, and I used to have a film holder up back in the corner here, but it was really hard to manage. So what I have now is I have a film storage box, a light-tight wooden film storage box that I designed to be operated with one hand, and then 2 trays, developer, fixer. Your fixer has a little bit of acetic acid in it, so it pretty much operates as a stop bath as well. It's just the life of the fixer would be more extended if you had a stop bath, at least a rinse, but this is my compromise. I was doing some tests earlier with some fogged sheets of black and white 4x5 paper, so I'll show you that in a minute. The ground glass view screen is up front here, and it's hinged with some gaffer's tape. There's a gaffer's tape hinge. This is basically lucite plastic that's been sanded down on the front side to form a functional ground glass, and this string right here basically keeps the ground glass open without falling down into the developer, and then it's out of the way for when you close it up. There is a little screw eye up here that fits into a slot and vertically, and then you turn the screw eye horizontally to lock the view screen in place. And then I have a little tab of some gaffer's tape for pulling the screen open. To focus the ground glass, this whole frame rides on 2 guide rods. And this is a common design that a lot of Afghan box cameras employ. And then your focusing rod pulls back like that, and this is how you focus the camera, by pulling the ground glass frame back and forward. And you set the focus point wherever you want it with a bulldog clip after you focused it, and that bulldog clip keeps the screen from being pulled back any further. So you can push the frame all the way forward to gain access for loading your film, and then you pull it back to your preset focus position to actually do your exposure. So let's run through a kind of a dry run of how I'm using this camera right now. So I have several sheets of fogged photo paper in my little storage box. So first of all, my little sliding lid allows me to remove my arm safely from the camera while there's exposed paper in it. So I have my film holder pushed all the way forward. I need to load my holder first. So I have my box of paper here, and I have it pushed up against the door side of the camera chamber, and I can open the lid like this, slide it open with one hand, raise it up, and grab a sheet of photo paper that's emulsion side up, and I'm going to slip it partly behind this little baffle to keep it from falling into the paper tray, the developer tray. And then I'm simply going to use my fingers to close the lid up like that. And now I want to twist the screw eye to the vertical position and then grab the tab. Oops, sometimes it hangs up. Grab the tab like that and open up the view screen, and now I pull the paper out and lay it face up onto my ground glass, and then the base of the paper I want to make sure here is centered between the wooden frame, and then I should be able to close this and twist the screw eye so it's locked shut. And now I will slide the focusing back to the preset position. I'll do my exposure up front on the lens, and then I'll close the shutter after the exposure is made, and I'll move the film holder up to the front again, open the ground glass. Sometimes the paper likes to get stuck in the frame here. Depends. If I cut it exactly 4x5, it's sometimes a little tight, so I need to cut it a little bit smaller. Anyways, I'm going to temporarily put the paper right here, emulsion side in, close the ground glass, and now grab the paper, emulsion side up, put it in the developer tray, and now I can start agitating and processing it. I usually keep a little paper towel wadded up in my arm sleeve. I'll grab that, dry my hands off, and I might even put the paper towel on top of the box here, because after the photo paper has been developed adequately, I usually let it drip here for 5 or 10 seconds, and then I'm going to transfer it to the fixer, and when I do that, it'll probably drip a little bit on the box. So I just transfer it like that. Now my wrist doesn't really easily bend like that. So that's about all I can do there, is drop it in the fixer, and then I can start agitating. And from that point on, I'll probably go ahead and close the door, remove my arm from the arm sleeve, and then I can access the camera from the back, and I can watch the image develop through the back door. Now the process I just ran you through will make a paper negative, but the paper negative is not really what people want. They want a print. And so the standard way of making prints with these Afghan box cameras is to have an easel, a little arm that flips up in front of your lens that you put the paper negative onto after it's been rinsed for a minute or so with water. And then you recompose and refocus onto that paper negative with your camera and the internal ground glass, and then you basically go through the whole process and rephotograph the paper negative with another sheet of paper to make a positive. When I've done this, I was using grade 2 glossy paper as the negative, and I was using RC paper, a matte finish warm tone RC paper for the print. And the nice thing about using multi-grade paper for the print is then I can use colored printing filters over the lens of the camera, and I can control the contrast of the final print. As long as I get most of the tones, like important things like facial tones, captured properly on the paper negative, the grade 2 paper, that's fine. But I want to modulate the contrast of the final print to make it as good as possible based on the kind of light I'm in, for instance. So that's why it's nice to have multi-grade paper for the final print. Now this is my grandson Noah's friend Mark, who was over at the house, and this is the negative. Now you notice I got it a little bit off-centered on the negative, but the nice thing about printing it is you can recenter things on the print pretty nicely with this oval mask. So I was pretty happy with that particular print. I really was happy that I got his eyes nice and sharp. He didn't move his head much between the time that I focused the camera and when I actually made the exposure, so nice and sharp picture. And I'm using a medium gray matte on the easel, so it prints as pretty much a medium gray when it's inverted. Okay, so the actual entire kit that I have for this project is basically this folding document cart with a handle and on wheels, so I can wheel it around. And I have this piece right here is the mount that the box sits on, and then on the bottom of that mount I'm using this Bruno's pneumatic tripod as a holder for the whole system. And then these pieces of flooring are little panels that fit down on the legs of the tripod to make storage for things like spare items like paper towels and a water rinse tray, etc. But all the accessories for this are down in that little cart. And my intention of it is to make a manageable system that I can go out on the street and do this in public. So this is the bottom plate of the mount that supports the box, and this is the head for the Bruno's tripod. It has an eye bolt in here that I used to tighten this over the shaft of the pneumatic tripod. And then there's a little leveling screw. You can level it in one axis. Okay, well here is the camera sitting on the base on the pneumatic tripod. Now there is a little cutout of this frame that fits the little flange for the arm sleeve. This was actually a spare cabinet shelf that the contractors made an extra one, or made it too wrong size. Anyway, they gave it to me, so this came from my kitchen remodel a few years ago, but it worked out handy for this project. So that's the arm sleeve side of the box, and of course the other side is currently open. There's the lens board, and here is the open side that would in operation have the panel in place. And the lid goes on like that, and each of these gate latches gets put in place, and it's a real simple little closure, but it is light tight the way the light trap is in there. Okay, so the mount for doing the printing is from this easel, and it slides on a piece of wood like this. This is like 1.5 by 1/4 inch, and that piece of wood will bolt underneath the camera with wing nuts, so I can remove it or install it as I want to. So I slide the easel back and forward to get the proper size image on the ground glass, and then I focus the ground glass for focusing internally. And then of course this can be removed when you're taking more paper negative portraits of people. That can be removed from the camera. So the actual image size on the 4 by 5 inch paper is 3 7/8 by 4 5/8. So the 4 by 5 paper I situate on the printing easel there, and I have a magnetic, these rubber flexible magnets that sticks like this to this metal backing, and it enables you to nicely frame it up and get it stabilized on the easel so it won't move around. You don't need to stick the paper here with like water. I know some of the people in some countries put water on the back side of the paper negative and kind of stick it on that way, but I figured if I wanted to dry the negative a little bit, I could just dry it first and then stick the negative onto the easel like that, and then it can be printed. The other thing I was working on for a while there was a way of drying the prints on the location dry enough to be able to give them, especially if it's a fiber-based print, And what I come up with is a little clearish, translucent Tupperware box, style box. It's actually a Sterilite. But I have a heavy piece of steel that I've ground the corners down so it's not sharp, and I've painted it matte black. And what I do is you stick the paper, after you rinsed it in a bucket of water, you put the paper on this hot plate, and you have this box situated outside facing the sun next to your camera. And this plate will get really toasty and hot, and you can sit the wet print that you've squeegeed off, the damp print, you can stick it in this box and put it in the sun for a couple of minutes and let the heat of that plate evaporate the water off the print. And it actually works fairly well. It only takes a few minutes to kind of dry the print pretty well. So that's my little solar-powered print drying kit, and of course the magnetic easel for printing your paper negatives. Now this was our neighbor Kim, and they were great people. Unfortunately, they don't live next to us anymore. They're out of state now. But this was Kim. This was the negative I shot, and it came out pretty good tonal-wise. And then the print, I really love that print. It came out really good. And I like this semi-matte finish, the glare on the lights. It's nice and soft. It's really good for a portrait, but really love that picture. It came out really good. So this is definitely the things you can do with these Afghan box cameras. When you calibrate the process and you use it enough times to get things dialed in properly. There's still a lot of improvements to this system that are needed before I can really go out and efficiently make portraits of people. I think, first of all, like the printing easel arm, the fact that I have to fiddle with wing nuts to remove and install that arm is really a bad idea. The way that people do it in other countries, just having the arm fold down and raise up and lock it in place real quick, seems like the best way of doing it. So I'm going to have to modify that system and make a quicker system for doing it. Also, I tend to be real meticulous about making sure the negatives are processed fully, and so my processing time is a little too long. It's like 2 minutes in the developer, 2 minutes in the fixer, another minute or two to rinse it, and maybe a minute to squeegee and try to dry it. So that's 8 minutes right there just to get a negative. And then to rephotograph it, well, it's going to take another 8 minutes to process it and dry the positive print, plus another couple minutes to get the easel set up and get it focused. So that's 20 minutes pretty well for doing a from start to finish with a finished print. I'm not really sure if people are willing to wait that long, 20 minutes to get their picture and their print in hand. So that's always kind of another aspect of this business that is how quick can I do this and how can I make this process a lot more efficient. I'm used to archivally processing photo paper in the darkroom, so I might have to compromise. Instead of a full 2-minute fix, maybe do a 1-minute fix, maybe with stronger fix for a shorter period of time. The same thing with the paper negatives, maybe make it a shorter development with slightly stronger chemistry, so I can reduce the time there considerably. So anyway, that's some ideas I have for doing that. I do have a little container for putting in rinse aid, and that's the other thing, is once it comes out of the fixer, dunk it a few times in a bucket of water and then put it in a rinse aid for a few seconds, and then another dunk in another bucket of cleaner water, and then quickly squeegee it, and it should be, at least an RC negative should be dry enough on the front from that point to quickly set up on your printing easel and get it ready to go. But I think if I had a fold-up easel for printing where the location where to place the negative on the easel was predefined, like with tape or something, and if the position of the easel on that arm was already preset, so everything could be in focus and everything be the right size ahead of time, that would be a big time saver. I could certainly save a few minutes there. But yeah, it's going to be involving fine-tuning the whole process to get it quick and expedient. Now, the other option, of course, is I could use Harman Direct Positive paper and avoid the whole printing stage. But the problem there is you have now a fiber-based piece of paper. It doesn't dry as easy. Even in my little solar-powered drying box, it's not going to adequately dry. So you're going to have to figure out how to give the customer, the client, a semi-wet piece of paper and tell them this is going to curl real badly unless you tape it to a piece of glass when you get home. It just seems, I don't know, unmanageable. And I wish Harman Ilford made their direct positive paper in a resin-coated finish. But anyways, we're stuck with what we have. So I may just end up using the two-step process that I have been doing. Well, this has been an update to my Afghan box camera project. I hope you guys found it interesting. And when I make more progress on this system, I'll do some more videos in the future, actually, of me setting it up and using it and looking at the results. Until next time, you guys have yourselves a great day.